According to director Todd Holland, back in 1985, Columbia Pictures didn't give much thought to Fright Night. Supposedly, Columbia expected Perfect to be that summer's box office smash. So they put all their effort into overseeing the production of John Travolta's magical crotch thrusting, leaving Todd Holland and the Fright Night crew to work pretty much undisturbed. Well, Fright Night was only the 35th highest grossing movie of 1985. At $25 million, grossed almost twice as much as Perfect, which only grossed a piddly $13 million. You know, 1985 was the same year they re-released Return of the Jedi, which grossed an additional $12 million. So, I guess you could say Perfect grossed more than Return of the Jedi. From a certain point of view. The creators behind Fright Night knew they had something. 2 months before the movie's release, they wrote to Columbia Pictures' Vice President of Production. Dear Robert, with the hope that Fright Night works as well as we all think it will this summer, wouldn't it be wonderful to have Fright Night 2 ready for release in August 1986? The gamble is so small and the stakes so high that I would strongly urge you and your colleagues to give some thought to immediately put into effect the development of a sequel screenplay.
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster!
Seeing as Fright Night 2 didn't come out until 1989, I'm guessing the answer to this letter was a resounding no. Despite its success, Columbia Pictures didn't give a shit about Fright Night. According to Todd Holland, the new studio chiefs wanted to produce more highbrow and dramatic fare, not more horror movies. So Fright Night 2 was eventually produced years later by a much smaller company. Like most fans, I was blindsided by the appearance of Fright Night 2. The original was one of my favorite VHS rentals. If I was having a sleepover, if I was home from school sick, Fright Night was my go-to choice.
Beware of the evil that awaits you on Fright Night. Friday night at 8 on Q13.
Fright Night 2 had no ads on TV, no theatrical appearances I was aware of. It was late 1989, the Batman mania of the summer was beginning to die down, and then out of the blue, Jumbo Video was renting a sequel to Fright Night.
I cannot believe we woke up the dog Vincent! Vito is gonna kill us!
Back then, direct-to-video movies were immediately seen as suspect. There was no streaming or Netflix, so movie theaters would play literally anything. How bad did a movie have to be that it wouldn't play at the theater? Turns out Fright Night 2 did get a very brief theatrical release earlier in the year, but in so few theaters, most people didn't know the movie existed until it came out on video. It certainly looked promising. Both Charlie and Roddy McDowall from the original movie were back, so this had to be better than some schlock slapped together for a quick buck. The sequel picks up with Charlie in college. I can't remember if they ever mention what he's studying. Like most movies revolving around a college kid, we never see him in class. He's been brainwashed by a psychiatrist into believing that Jerry Dandridge was just a run-of-the-mill serial killer.
Was Jerry Dandridge a vampire?
No, there's no such thing.
How do you know?
Because vampires don't exist.
So of course, the very next scene has him looking out the window and seeing coffins being delivered, just like in the original. This is the building where Peter Vincent lives. Not sure how he went from broke and evicted from his shitty rat hole apartment in the first movie to now living it up in this elegant palatial condominium. I don't care how many nights he's on the air, there's no way he's making a rock star salary working as the horror movie host on a local TV station. He's probably lucky if he makes gas money. Charlie has a new girlfriend. By this point, Amanda Bearse was well known for playing Marcy on Married with Children, so maybe the producers thought no one would take her serious for a horror film.
What was the logic behind not having Amy involved, but rather a separate, like, second girlfriend, if you will? You know what I mean? Was there
logic, did you say?
Yeah.
Anyway, it makes sense for Charlie to have a new girlfriend. You generally drift away from your high school sweetheart when you go off to college. Besides, Amy seemed smart, so she probably went to MIT or some shit, and Charlie wound up going to the local community college, which he only chose because they had their own bowling alley.
Oh, you're so cool, Brewster!
What about Evil Ed? How come he's not in this movie? His absence is a little harder to justify, but a commentator on YouTube seems to have stumbled across the perfect solution. According to Javier Gonzalez, Amy was killed by Evil Ed the next night. Then Charlie killed him. Problem solved. Damn. Well, that closes that narrative loophole. After visiting Peter Vincent, Charlie's new girlfriend tells him to hang tight for a moment.
I'll be right back.
They were on their way to the car. Where could she possibly be going? Do apartment buildings usually have public bathrooms in the lobby? If she needed to take a shit, she could have done that in Peter's apartment. While Charlie's waiting, he sees the new team of vampires arrive. We have quite the squad in this movie. There's the roller skating vampire, the Wolfman vampire, the sexy lady head vampire, and their bug-eating bodyguard. Most fans hold Fright Night 2 in high regard, with some enjoying it as much or more than the original.
There was a second one?
I can't go that far. The movie lacks that lightning in a bottle quality that made the first one so exciting. Still, Fright Night 2 does a better job than most sequels of being its own movie. Rather than just repeating the story of the original, Fright Night 2 tries to do something different. I just wish the movie had done it a little better. In the sequel, this new lady vampire has come to town because she's Jerry Dandridge's sister. Look, they even have the same coffin. As revenge for killing her brother, she plans to turn Charlie into a vampire.
Your punishment won't be as severe as Charlie Brewster's.
Are we really scared for Charlie? I mean, the reason vampire stories fascinate us so much is that a part of us find the idea attractive. Sleep all day, party all night, never grow old, never die. I mean, look at Charlie, cutting classes so he can go bowling. He ain't never graduating from college. He's going nowhere. Frankly, turning him into a vampire is probably doing him a big favor.
As a matter of fact, yes.
There's lots of things in the movie I find frustrating. Like how at the start, Charlie no longer believes in vampires, but Peter does.
To the unending task of conquering the forces of evil.
So when Charlie spies his friend getting chowed down on by the lady vampire and roller girl, he tells Vincent, and you think Vincent would be all, "Thank God, Charlie, you see the light again. Come, let me get my steaks and we'll clean house." But instead, he treats Charlie as if he's insane.
If they are what you say they are, and if
You don't believe me? You, of all people? I know what it looks like, but don't let your guard down.
Then, after Peter pulls the old mirror trick and sees the party is full of vampires, now Charlie is the one who's all.
Peter, what we saw last night was an act by a performance artist. That's all it was, Peter, an act.
Come on, guys, it's not that hard to get on the same page. This is getting very close to Roger Ebert's idiot plot rule. I'm also bothered by how sloppy Charlie's initial meeting with the lady vampire goes. She visits his dorm room to bum a smoke, they start making out, and she bites him. Only he wakes up because it was all a dream. There is nothing audiences hate more than the "it was all a dream" bit. If something didn't really happen, don't waste our time showing it. It's silly having to see basically the same scene twice, because after the party, the lady vampire comes to Charlie's room and bites him for real this time. Slowly, Charlie picks up the affectations of vampires. He's staring at girls' necks, he can't eat garlic.
Now, we need holy water.
Holy water.
We need communion wafers.
Communion wafers?
Once again, Catholicism gets singled out as the most effective way to fight evil. Do items from any other religion have the same power? Like maybe vampires also can't stand menorahs, or prayer mats, or even copies of Dianetics? I also find it strange that this movie shows our lady vampire out during the day. Sure, Bug Boy is shielding her with an umbrella, but it still flies in the face of what happened when her brother was in the sunlight.
Over the centuries, one develops a bit of tolerance for some of the trappings.
Okay, so I guess she built up a tolerance for sunlight. Good for her. Only at the end of the movie, Peter uses, yes you guessed it, sunlight to defeat her. So I don't know what I'm supposed to think. Wait a minute. Was that really the lady vampire outside in daylight in that one scene? Well, yeah, that's her limo. That's her major domo. Who else would it be? Plus, the top she's wearing outside in the daylight is the same one she's wearing in the next scene when she bites Charlie's buddy. But the actress in this scene has short hair, and in every other scene she has longer hair. Why would her hair be different for this one scene? I don't know. That's very strange. we never got a Fright Night 3, despite star Roddy McDowall's eagerness to play Peter Vincent one more time. Having achieved success by producing the Kurt Russell Goldie Hawn movie Overboard, which postmodern critics now insist has a heavy rape subtext, Roddy McDowall began putting together Fright Night 3. The rights to produce another Fright Night sequel were held by a movie executive named Jose Menendez. Roddy McDowall had several meetings with Menendez before he convinced Fright Night's original writer-director, Todd Holland, to come on board for Part 3. However, 2 weeks before McDowall and Holland were to meet with Menendez, he and his wife were gunned down by their children, the infamous Menendez brothers. And that pretty much put an end to Fright Night 3. The franchise rights were so tangled up after that, it took 20 years for DreamWorks to get things straightened out so they could do their remake. And that's probably only because they had the mighty Steven Spielberg involved.